For the past year, the globe has experienced some of the most extreme weather conditions it has yet. These include flooding in Brazil and Australia, wildfires in Chile, droughts in the United States and Australia, typhoons in China, and of course, what most people here in the States remember is Superstorm Sandy.
Oh my God, it's washing everything away!
The East Coast is being pummeled with the power of a record-breaking superstorm. 90-mile-per-hour winds, driving rain, record-breaking high tides, and rough surf lash the coastline.
Water is flowing from the beach here into the city of 35,000, this suburb of New York City. They're expecting a storm surge of somewhere between 4 and 8 feet. It is possible this entire low-lying barrier island will be overflowed with water in the next 12 hours or so.
Hurricane Sandy crashing on shore, winds now at 90 miles per hour, and this storm is so big, so vast, 60 million Americans will feel its power.
One of the worst storms that has ever hit Atlantic City. This city is basically underwater.
Delivering the kind of rain seen once every century. The flooding waters rising for hours to come.
This is the storm that we forecasted and then some.
Some are adamant that global warming is not the cause of these extreme weather conditions. There's simply more population and more property in harm's way. There's more people living in flood-prone areas now than there used to be. And some can cause that Hurricane Sandy was not a result of global warming and extreme weather, but more of where it hit and how it hit and the time of the day it hit that caused the losses that it did. However, there is much evidence that global warming is the cause of these extreme weather conditions. For one, Munich Re, one of the largest reinsurers globally, released a study in October 2012 called Severe Weather in North America. Now, it focused a lot on North America and the effects of storms in recent years on this region. But weather-related loss events have become more common globally. This includes a quintupling over the past 5 years of extreme weather conditions, 4 times in Asia, 2.5 times in Africa, 2 times in Europe, and 1.5 times in South America. That alone shows in recent years how much these loss events and these weather-related losses have increased. One of the main points that Munich Re made in their report is that nowhere in the world is the rising number of natural catastrophes more evident than North America. And the main reason for this is North America is susceptible to every type of major loss. Tropical cyclones, thunderstorms, winter storms, hurricanes, anything, droughts, floods. North America, unlike any region, is susceptible to all of these, and their losses are increasing more than anybody else. Another study, in addition to Munich Re's, released recently with providing a lot of evidence as to how global warming is the effect of these losses, is NASA's study entitled Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences Study on Global Warming and Change. And it shows that there's been a rapid increase in global warming temperatures and a range of anomalies in recent years. To quote and further prove how climate change has affected these losses, NASA reports that these extreme heat waves were a consequence of global warming because their likelihood in the absence of global warming was exceedingly. Although the insurance industry isn't incurring as many losses as they could have with this storm if more was covered, it is making them very scared for what could come in years to come with more storms. People are now going to become more educated, seeing what happened with Sandy, seeing how many people were not covered because they didn't have the flood insurance, and there's going to be a large rise in people seeking out flood insurance. The insurance industry needs to be prepared for this, and they need to begin, deciding how they want to go about insuring these losses in more flood-prone areas, because at this point with these extreme weather conditions, there's no area along the coast that you can be sure won't get hit with a hurricane. Many people in Jersey never thought they'd see the damage they did from Sandy, and they did. So, many insurers are going to be sought out by policyholders to add flood insurance to their program. This is going to be a high risk for insurers, and they're going to have to adjust how they underwrite. The main thing that fueled Hurricane Sandy was the higher than average sea level along the East Coast. Now, there's 2 things happening right now in Manhattan that kind of together caused the hurricane and the storm surge to be what it was. Now, this storm surge was the main cause of the damage in Hurricane Sandy. Had it not arrived at high tide, had the sea level not been what it was, it probably wouldn't have seen the damage that they did. And it still could have been worse. By the time Sandy hit land, it was no longer a hurricane. It had just 74-mile-per-hour winds, and it was down to a post-tropical cyclone. so the storm surge could have been much worse, but it did still see the damage because of these high sea levels. And the two things occurring in New York right now is, Manhattan is what they think is slowly sinking because of, ice age glaciers are melting, the sea level is rising, and, the storm might not have had the surge it did if this wasn't in it. As most people know, Hurricane Sandy, or Superstorm Sandy, is one of the most well-known storms in the past couple years that is, really causing all these questions to be asked about global warming, and is this the new normal? Are we going to continue to see patterns of these changing and more extreme weather events? Just to compare Hurricane Sandy to a couple of other recent storms, this was an over 1,000 square mile storm, which is more than double the landfall size of Hurricane Isaac and Hurricane Irene combined. It had the lowest pressure ever recorded for a hurricane north of North Carolina. And it was considered to be a post-tropical cyclone by the time it made landfall, but it was a hurricane, or a Category 3 hurricane while out at sea. Despite which side of the argument people are on, whether they think it has to do with socioeconomic changes and, wealth and more expensive homes on the coast and where people are locating, or whether they truly believe it has to do with global warming, one thing is for certain: this is the new normal. We are going to continue to see these extreme weather events and losses, and the insurance industry needs to prepare for it.
So the insurance industry needs to come up with new strategies to better prepare for these changes in the environment and how storms are getting worse, how droughts are more frequent. Just in the United States alone, average temperatures have been increasing steadily throughout the past years. This past year, there was 25,000 new record highs in the United States. So these increasing weather events are causing economic changes, which in the form of crop losses, changes to agriculture, affecting the infrastructure of the country. So basically, insurers are experiencing more losses from these storms, from these increased weather events. So I recently read a study that talked about how property casualty insurers really need to look at the new risk exposures and evaluate these losses and better prepare for the emerging weather patterns because it's becoming a really big issue. Companies need to implement a more modernized risk management strategy. Traditionally, companies have looked at their history of claims and history of losses to determine future rates and premiums. But now, companies can't really look at the past data, and they need to kind of predict into the future how, because of all these increased weather events and the storms, and that's something they've never really experienced before. They need to kind of implement a new strategy that is more modern, that takes into account the possibility of these extreme weather events. Even if they are, it's a slim possibility. I recently read a study that had a really good quote in it. The study was called U.S. Property Casualty Insurers, and the quote was, "Recent loss data suggests that many property casualty insurers may not be currently well equipped to address the uncertainty of increasingly unpredictable and severe extreme weather events." So basically that quote's saying that insurers and insurance companies aren't really prepared to face the probability of increasingly extreme weather events, whether it's hurricanes, droughts, any of those kind of events that are as a result of climate change are becoming more severe and more frequent and becoming longer in duration. So another recommendation that I've come up with based on research and just my experience with insurance and my knowledge of insurance is that companies need to integrate kind of models and data that predict weather events into their new modernized risk strategy. So the first recommendation was coming up with this modern risk strategy. And then the second one was is integrating new models and using tools that are available to predict these weather events, because there are tools available that can better predict possibility of extreme weather events. Even if they are very slim, it's definitely necessary for insurers to look into this. Examples of these tools include economic capital models, more sophisticated kind of catastrophe modeling and management, and dynamic financial analyses. And finally, for my third recommendation, companies need to invest more money in finding tools and creating new ways to predict these extreme weather events. So My first recommendation, like I said, was coming up with this modernized risk strategy. The second one is kind of using tools that they already have, and then the third one is kind of being more innovative and looking into the future and finding different ways to better predict storms. So it's kind of, insurers need to look at previous storms and how the insurance industry has responded to these storms. Another important thing that insurers need to do more of, even though they have been doing historically, is helping their policyholders, the people that own policies with the insurance companies that insure their homes or businesses, their buildings, is helping these people become more resilient when it comes to facing storms. So that means that people need to be more proactive with protecting their homes in the case of hurricanes, even if they are in an area where it's very slim that a hurricane would hit, like somewhere in New Jersey, for example. These people weren't really prepared for the disasters that Sandy brought about, but companies need to be more proactive about just making sure that if they are in any way in danger of kind of being affected by some kind of extreme weather event, they need to prepare their homes and to be more resilient. Examples of how companies can kind of incentivize people to do this to their homes is either they don't provide the insurance unless these people do certain things to their homes, or they lower rates or premiums if people do certain things, like better prepare their homes. So examples of things that homeowners or anyone that owns a building or kind of as a property owner can do to better prepare for storms, say in terms of specifically hurricanes, since we are kind of focusing on Hurricane Sandy and how hurricanes are affecting the United States. They can elevate their homes, can put up storm walls, flood vents. Those types of things would really help when a storm did come. They can also build a stronger foundation, or the materials they use to build, like the walls and the roof of their house, can be stronger and sturdier. And that way when storms do hit, the damage won't be as extensive. So kind of everyone wins. The insurers and the policyholders both win.